Industrialization has taken up a great deal of time throughout American history. It has formed what our technology, jobs, and lifestyle is today. There are 4 different types of industrialization, first being pre-industrialization. Pre-industrialization is what started our country off with new beginnings. During pre-industrialization, there was mercantilism, which was when our country started trading. Things such as raw materials, finished goods, and crops were traded. When trading, countries would provide raw materials to the mother country, and the mother country would then take the finished goods out of the raw materials and sell them back to the colonies. Farming during this era was important for jobs. In the South was where this mostly happened. They grew cash crops on the plantations where they made the living out of farming, while in the North the farming was subsidized, where they just used farming for survival. The North had different jobs than the South, like one-man shops, craftsmen, artisan, and lumbering. The North's government was different than the South as well. The South had a government based on plantations called the planters' elite, when the North had a meeting house near the church where they would make the decisions for the town. Their religion was basically made off religion.
Next is early industrialization. In the early industrialization period, there was a change in the work life. Farming was moving out of the picture and factory life was moving in. New technology was growing, and transporting goods was used by waterways and canals. These canals were usually in the factory's area, where it was easier to transport the goods after finishing them. Workers moved from farming and craftsmanship to large factories. With the factories, it made it easier to make the goods quicker. More workers could also be employed at these factories. Most families that were employed at the factories were under a contract. If one family member couldn't work, then the entire family would be fired. Conditions for working in the factory were dangerous for the employees, and especially for the children that were working there too. The ventilation was bad as there were no air vents for fresh air to travel through the factory. In the winter it was very cold, and in the summer it was very hot. Then there were the machines that were highly dangerous and very loud. Many people lost fingers and even entire arms to them. When living in the factory's cabins, they were always in the smog of the factory. George Pullman, the man who invented the Pullman rail car, paid his workers in Pullman money. He built stores within the factory grounds and made workers buy all their needs and goods from there. That way he didn't have to pay them actual money, and the money would eventually be filtered back to him. With the factory system that was adopted during this time period, producing more goods using this newfound system, owners were able to trade more and get more profit from the goods that they produced, therefore getting more back from other countries and companies around.
Later industrialization came next. During later industrialization, there was an improvement of technology, life, jobs, etc. Businesses took over the job world. More and more companies were beginning to get bigger. 2 men by the names of Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller were a large impact of the business world. They had businesses that took over small businesses, and they became some of the richest men in the world at the time. There were people called political machines, such as Carnegie and Rockefeller, which were believed to be scamming the city in different ways. During this period of time, it was a new beginning for immigrants coming to the United States. With the opportunity of more jobs here, thousands of immigrants traveled from their home countries to start a new life. Little did immigrants know, even though the United States looked like a world of new opportunities, it wasn't as great on the inside that it seemed on the out.
Finally came post-industrialization. During the 1920s, there were these people called progressives. These people made laws or acts that would make society better. These laws are what made some of the ways of living now what they are. The 1920s was when the economy boomed. More people had more money to buy more things. People started buying furniture, appliances for their house, new technology, started going to jazz events and sporting events, and the economy was booming rapidly more than ever. Women were wearing things that were shorter and tighter. They were becoming more freely. These women were called flappers. New ways to make business big was happening. The assembly line was one of these things that made things more efficient and easier for producers. Along with the assembly line came the first popular American car. With new automobiles, people started working in the city and living in the suburban area, where they commute to their job in the city. Jobs were becoming less of factory life like blue collar and more white collar like management. The Depression came in the 1930s and the stock market crashed. After the Depression, more white collar jobs took over more and more. In the 2000s, factory life was overseas. Companies found that it was easier for their companies to be in different countries and pay workers lower wage, while in America, people wanted a job that would pay more, not for minimum wage and long hours.